This is a video presentation of Bible 2114, Bible Survey, Unit 37, Miracles. After viewing this presentation, the student should be familiar with the terminology used to describe miracles. Give a working definition of a miracle. Identify the periods of history in which miracles are stressed and the persons and events around which they center. Be aware of the use of timing in miracles. Be familiar with the various types of miracles. And explain the purposes of miracles. Your speakers today are Dr. Roy Hayden and Dr. Jerry Horner.
The greatest miracle in the Bible is the resurrection of Jesus. Those who believe in miracles have no trouble accepting his resurrection as fact. However, for those who have already determined that such an event as the resurrection could not occur, some other explanation of the event must be found. Some people, merely by definition, rule out miracles. Rudolf Bultmann is an example of such a person. His position is what is called a closed continuum. This means that God established certain laws by which the universe is run, and God himself will not violate those laws. God cannot intervene in a supernatural way. If one starts with an assumption that miracles are impossible, then the basis on which a definition could be worked out is already excluded. It seems that the people of the Bible never faced a problem of miracle. This is because our problem of miracle is based on a philosophical system developed since the biblical period. It is a problem for persons who have been trained in science and philosophy. Presuppositions play a very important part in interpretation. But how shall we define miracle? Commonly, it is stated that a miracle is a supernatural event. Or to be more accurate, the Westminster Dictionary of the Bible says, in the narrowest biblical sense, miracles are events in the external world wrought by the immediate power of God and intended as a sign or attestation. This definition will be assumed as we take a look at some of the miracles in the Old Testament. It does not say too much, but at the same time allows for the working of God at various levels. The Old Testament miracles are mainly grouped around two epochs: the deliverance from Egypt and the reformation of Elijah and Elisha. There are a few miracles reported also in the period of the exile with Daniel and his friends, but by and large the miracles center around Moses and the two prophets, Elijah and Elisha. It is not without significance that they do so, for it is at these two great crises in the fortunes of Israel that the working of God's providence were most apparent to pious observers. In the period of Moses, very few of the so-called miracles are difficult to believe, since the majority of them are not in themselves out of the order of nature. The 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, the crossing of the Jordan, water coming from the rock at Rephidim and at Kadesh, the curing of the waters of Marah, the budding of Aaron's rod, the deaths of Nadab and Abihu, the death of Korah and his company, none of these involved any apparent breach in the continuity of the physical order. No one single event would seem a supernatural miracle to an impartial observer. It is rather the occurrence of so many circumstances of the kind which compels us to acknowledge their character and conveys to us the conviction that here was the finger of God. And it is even more important to observe that these remarkable events here were associated in many cases with a word spoken by God's representatives. The plagues are foretold. So was the death of the rebels in Korah's rebellion. In the case of Elijah and Elisha, miracles were their credentials. In 1 Kings 17:24, the woman whose son Elijah had raised from the dead said to him, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of God is in your mouth and is truth." Other prophets in the Old Testament had no miracles. This shows that it was not the habit of the Hebrews to surround the figure of every prophet with a halo of miraculous glory. But Elijah and Elisha live in a period of spiritual upheaval. They were fighting for their lives and for the continued existence of the worship of Yahweh. The worship of Baal and Asherah was a grave threat. The perpetual burden of Elijah's prayers was, "Let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel." 1 Kings 18:36. Perhaps nothing short of a miraculous sign would have satisfied the Israel of his day that the Lord was God. At the same time, it must be admitted that the accounts of these two great prophets stand somewhat apart from the general history of Israel. For a moment, let's take a look at some of the miracles from the time of Moses. The plagues which came upon Egyptians are considered miracles by some, as merely natural phenomena by others. The water turned to blood can possibly be explained by the pollution of the Nile with fungi, plants, and insects. It is well known that this phenomenon happens from time to time. Frogs, which constitute the second plague, multiply every year after the inundation of the Nile, and the locusts breed in the favorable climate of the Sudan and invade the neighboring countries. The Bible indicates they were brought in by an east wind and driven out by a strong west wind. Perhaps most of the plagues were only extreme aggravations of pests that normally afflict Egypt year after year. Is the miracle in the extreme aggravations, or should we look elsewhere? Unfortunately, we do not know where the Red Sea was that the Israelites crossed when they left Egypt. But again, the Bible tells us that a strong east wind blew all night and drove the sea back. For the possibility that this was a tidal wave of some sort, see Emanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, page 85 and following. If again this can be attributed to natural phenomena, where is the miracle? Another good example of this sort, perhaps the best example for our purpose, is the crossing of the Jordan River just before the Israelites attacked the city of Jericho. Joshua 3:16 states, "The water coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap far off at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those flowing down toward the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, were wholly cut off. And the people passed over opposite Jericho." The Jordan River was blocked at a place called Adam. The Jordan flows here in a deep channel, bordering on the east, or bordered on the east by high, almost perpendicular valley slopes. As the material that builds up this slope is highly erodible, its lowermost part is constantly being undercut by the river. And when this material slides down into the riverbed, it occasionally dams up the channel. Temporarily, it stops the flow of the water. Such occurrences are recorded for AD 1267, 1906, and 1927. In 1927, after an earthquake, the river was blocked for over 21 hours. Here again we have natural phenomena. Earthquakes may have been responsible for the blocking of the Jordan when the Israelites crossed. and it may also explain the collapse of the wall of Jericho. Again, where is the miracle? It is my contention that God uses natural means on most occasions to produce miracles. The miracle is having the people and the events at the right place at the right time. The timing of the event is the miracle. The plagues came and left when Moses said they would. The Red Sea parted when Israel needed to cross. The Jordan was blocked at the very moment the feet of the priests touched the water. Many miracles are miracles of timing. There are several other wonders, however, that are difficult to explain by natural means, such as the increase of the widow's oil and meal in the days of Elijah. C.S. Lewis would say, the miracle consists in a shortcut. Other miracles that fall in this class are the two instances of miraculous feeding. They involve the multiplication of a little bread and a little fish into much bread and much fish. Every year God makes a little corn into much corn. The seed is sown and there is an increase. The comment on page 44 of the text is appropriate at this point. In science, it is not always possible to find one theory which accounts for and describes every aspect of an event. It is sometimes necessary to have two or more theories, not as alternatives, but held together. Now, when a scientist investigates a miracle, he may or may not be able to offer a natural explanation. This is the function of science. The account of the crossing of the Red Sea in the Bible refers to a strong wind. That is the natural explanation. But the same account also ascribes the event to God. There are two levels of description. Both are true. One answers the question of how, the other the question of why. To say that God did it is to give the ultimate cause and to give meaning to it. The description given by science, where one is possible, explains how God did it. Several different terms are used to translate the various words which carry the idea of miracle. Some of these are sign, wonder, work, mighty work, portent, and prodigy. The two Hebrew words most commonly used for miracle occur in Deuteronomy 13:1. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder. The word for sign is ot, and the word for wonder is mophet. Ot is used in the sense of sign, pledge, or token. It is a sign of the supernatural, an event or act which, to those who behold it, reveals something about God. Mophet means wonder, sign, portent, or miracle. It is a special display of God's power, as in the case of Moses and Aaron in Egypt. These two words can be used as synonyms with approximately the same meaning. They were so closely linked that they came to be used together as an idiom, otot, umophetim, signs and wonders. Another Hebrew word for miracle is pele, which means something beyond one's power to do or to understand. It appears in Exodus 15:11, referring to wonders of the Exodus. In Psalm 89, verses 5 and 6, it refers to the wonders of the natural world. Miracles are events due to the direct power of God, because they never could have been brought to pass by natural forces only, working according to natural law. Natural forces may have indeed been present, but the essential idea of a miracle is that those forces would not have been able of themselves to bring about the event. The credibility of miracles is not a scientific question, but a question of the existence of God. Miracles are simply the result of the personal causation of God. If there is no God, then there are no miracles. But if there is a God, why should not He be able to do something, and on a far greater scale, that natural law by itself could never accomplish? The man who believes in God really has no excuse for rejecting miracles as impossible. In essence, this is what Paul said long ago in Acts 26:8. Why should it be thought incredible with you that God should raise the dead?
The New Testament records many accounts of miracles wrought by Jesus Christ, but does not profess to give them all. In fact, the Apostle John stated in chapter 20, verse 25 of his Gospel, that the whole world would not be able to contain the books which could be written, telling of the marvelous deeds of Jesus. Incidental references in the Gospel confirm the assertion that Jesus wrought many more miracles. For instance, in John 3:2, Nicodemus said that the miracles had convinced him that Jesus was a teacher sent from God. And in John 4:43 through 45, we learn that miracles gained Jesus an unexpected welcome in Galilee. Yet, not a single one of the miracles referred to is on record. Those which are recorded are only representative samples, or told because they introduce certain discourses. Never in a single instance did Jesus work a miracle for His own safety, comfort, or convenience. He was hungry, but refused to turn stones into bread. He was thirsty, and asked a Samaritan woman for water. But He did not use His miraculous power to refresh Himself. He was often weary from long marches, but He never transported Himself from one place to another by miraculous power. His concern in all His miracles was for others, not for Himself. Neither did He perform miracles to bring conviction to doubters. It is true, as we shall discuss later, He did refer to them as validating His divine mission, but that was after they had taken place. The miracles indeed were signs to faith, but Jesus never sought to compel faith in Himself by means of supernatural acts. He never ascribed to miracles the power of conversion. On the contrary, He said of the Jews in Luke 16:31, "If they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if one rise from the dead." Many of the people who saw Lazarus come out of the tomb immediately plotted to kill Jesus. Undoubtedly, however, miracles were corroborating evidence for those who had received Christ as the Messiah. So Jesus never put His powers on exhibition to satisfy the curiosity or awaken the faith of a crowd that had no ear for His instruction. The occasion in each situation was some human need that aroused His sympathies. The only exception, perhaps, was the cursing of the fig tree, which was done for the purpose of instruction. The miracles of Jesus, then, showed His practice to be consistent with His revealed character. As such, the miracles are indispensable as part of the revelation Jesus came to bring. The very heart of historic Christianity is the incarnation, the good news that God for us and for our salvation visited the earth and walked among us in the person of Jesus Christ. Merely to assert this would be comparatively easy, but very unconvincing. The Gospels, however, go far beyond making a mere assertion. They effectively portray the incarnate God by relating just how he acted and what he said. If the accounts of the life of Jesus contained no miracles, what kind of being would be portrayed before us? It would be the account of a man said to be God incarnate, who sojourned for a few years in a suffering and sorrowing world, but did nothing to help, who said to a paralytic, "Thy sins be forgiven thee," but could not prove it by telling him to get up and walk, who was supposed to have made the world, but was himself at the mercy of the elements, who could weep with bereaved sisters, but could not restore their brother. Without the miracles, our whole conception of God incarnate would go to pieces. Instead of the majestic figure that has dominated the centuries, walking among suffering men with divine power and compassion, we would have a shriveled up, contemptible Jesus who preached beautifully but did not practice what he preached. His miracles, therefore, were external manifestations or signs which help us to understand the moral work he had come to accomplish. As his teaching was a miracle in words, so his miracles were a teaching in acts. His healing miracles reveal him to be the one who can cure the moral miseries of humanity, with the power to deliver souls from Satan and to free them from the eternal death which threatens them. His nature miracles, stilling the storm, multiplying the loaves, etc., prove that he has the power of establishing perfect harmony between the whole universe and a sanctified humanity. Jesus Christ made tremendous claims for himself. His lofty teachings concerning his own deity were authenticated by the performance of miraculous signs. The Gospel of Mark is filled with examples of the evidential value of miracles. Notice such passages as Mark 1:28 and 45, 2:10, 5:19, 6:2 and 14, 7:37, 8:18 through 21. To these could be added others. The Gospel of John is particularly the Gospel of signs. In fact, signs is the word John used to designate the miracles. After the miracle at Cana, the disciples of Jesus believed on him, John 2:11. Upon the healing of his son, the official believed in Jesus, John 4:53. Jesus said in John 5:36, "These very works which I am doing bear witness that the Father has sent me." In John 6:14, when the people saw the miracle of feeding the 5,000, they recognized Jesus as the Messiah. Jesus performed so many signs that the people had a dilemma, as revealed in John 7:31. When the Christ appears, will he do more signs than this man has done? The miracles leave people without excuse, as Jesus stated in John 15:24. "If I had not done among them the works which no one else did, they would not have sinned. But now they have seen and hated both me and my Father." The miracles of Christ provided men with a powerful incentive to trust him, as seen in the words of Jesus in John 10:38. "Even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me." In Matthew 11:21, Jesus chided the cities of Chorazin and Bethsaida for not believing on the basis of the evidence provided by his miracles. For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago. When John the Baptist questioned the Messiahship of Jesus, the Lord responded in Luke 7:22, "Go and tell John what you have seen and heard." The early apostolic preaching, as seen in such passages as Acts 2:22 and 10:38, constantly appealed to the miracles of Jesus which accredited his divinity. Undoubtedly, however, the greatest emphasis in the New Testament is placed on the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ as the supreme sign of his deity. An example of the many passages which cite the resurrection as the greatest miracle is Romans 1:4. The working of miracles did not cease with the ascension of Jesus Christ. He promised in Mark 16:17 that signs would follow those who believe in him. And Mark concludes his gospel in verse 20 by stating that the Lord worked with the apostles, confirming the word with signs following. Only a cursory survey of the book of Acts and the epistles will reveal the substance of Mark's statement. Hebrews 2:4 explicitly states that God confirmed the ministry of the apostles with signs, wonders, miracles, and the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Paul continually appealed to the miracles wrought in his ministry. Notice particularly Romans 15:18 and 19, 1 Corinthians 2:4, 2 Corinthians 12:12, 1 Thessalonians 1:5. The miracles of the apostles are a continuation and complement of the miracles of Jesus. The New Testament gives no support to the teaching that the age of miracles ended with the apostles. On the contrary, the words of Jesus in Mark 16 and of Paul in 1 Corinthians 12:10 indicate that the working of miracles would be a permanent feature in the life of the church. History has borne out the validity of that statement. Jesus Christ is eternally the same, and that includes his compassion and his power. Who in the world would want a God who has lost all his zap? Miracles were an indispensable attestation to the validity of the gospel in the first century, and no one is entitled to say that they have been anything less than indispensable to faith in any succeeding age.
Briefly, to summarize, miracles in the Old Testament come mainly in the two difficult periods of Israelite history and were basically a means of giving evidence or authority to the message of God's representative. A miracle is an event in the external world wrought by the immediate power of God and is intended as a sign or attestation. Some miracles defy a natural explanation on the basis of our present knowledge. For the most part, miracles occurred in only 4 periods of biblical history.
Miracles are events due to the direct power of God, which could not have happened by natural forces alone, working according to natural law. Jesus performed miracles in response to human need. The miracles of Jesus reveal his character. The miracles attest to the validity of the gospel. The New Testament teaches that miracles will continue to confirm the preaching of the Word.
This has been a video presentation of Bible Survey, Unit 37, Miracles. Your speakers have been Dr. Roy Hayden and Dr. Jerry Horner. This program was produced by the Department of Instructional Media Services of Oral Roberts University.